Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion and the Ball Over Passion podcast specifically. We're going to be joined by CK in a minute, but we're just waiting for him. We're joined by George and Willow as always, but we're also joined by a special guest in Alex today. So say hello, Alex. Don't be shy.
Hello, Alex.
So yeah, today we're going to be covering the Norwich game that has just been squeaked by, as we put it. So 1-0 to the Arsenal. And yeah, let's get started. So in terms of the lineups, I've got them here. So let's have a quick look at them. They are, here we go. So here we have the Arsenal lineup. So I want to hear what people think about this lineup here. Anyone go for it, man?
I want to start with what I'll say is I didn't think Mikel would start Tomiyasu and Ramsdale.
I told you.
I know, bro. You did.
I told you in the preview.
You did, and fair enough. You know what? I'll take my hat off to you. Fair enough. Fair play to Mikel because he's got balls for doing that.
Yeah, I think we hoped he would, but didn't think he would.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, I hoped as well. Like I wanted Ramsdale to start. I wanted Tomiyasu to start, but I don't think Mikel would do it. I thought he was going to play it more safe. And you know what? Fair play to him. You know, he proved me wrong. And I think that does show, a little bit of what is an insight of what's going on. The character that he's at the point now where I think he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't, and he will make decisions that people do not like. And he's just dethroned the. I am number one. I will always be number one. And look, mate, now you're number two. So I think, and I think we'll start reaping the rewards for that. Aaron Ramsdale coming in. I think like yesterday, I think it showed how well his distribution could be at times and how much it actually helped us. That one where he sidestepped Timo Pukki. God, I said to my dad, I was like, Jesus Christ, if that was Leno, that'd end up in the back of the net. I don't know what you think about it, boys, but I was very happy with them decisions being made at least.
George?
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at the line, I predicted that Aaron and Tomiyasu would come in because, in my opinion, when you've got this philosophy of buildup that we had to do, there's two very different goalkeepers, and I think when you look at even Mikel's post-match comments, I think he said as much, and he kind of has been telling us for a while that Ramsdale would be put in at the soonest opportunity. I think Tommy, you could make a case because he only had what 2 training sessions before he did come in. He did fly early. In fact, he was taken off because he was feeling a little bit of cramp, and so I definitely felt that he was one of those that could have maybe missed out. But I think Aaron starting was absolutely going to be the case. Looking at the lineup, I love the first 5. What you're looking at right here is our plan. I felt that we were very defensively resolute too in the game, which we'll get into. But the pivot worried me, guys. I'm not going to lie. When I saw this starting lineup, I looked at that pivot and I said, I'm worried about the experience levels there. I was worried about the off-the-ball running and transition control. Both players, while they have their qualities on the ball, are just not reliable off the ball, and they do both vacate their zone, some more than others. But those 2 players right there, they struggle to control transitions consistently. So I was worried, particularly with the Norwich side that, press from the front and there is space behind. I was worried whether or not we could tie together our defense and attack. And, I think we saw some of those troubles with that pivot. But moving up into the front line, I guess Emil was just too sick to really get started, which is fine. And I think this was probably the best that you could put out under those circumstances. I still prefer Saka from the right and Emil from the left, but I think in terms of what we heard from, pre-match in terms of illness and whatnot, I think this is the best that we could do, despite not it being my first choice rather. But yeah, I think all in all, fairly good. I guess for those that are maybe listening on Spotify, just a reminder of the lineup. Goalkeeper was Ramsdale, then starting at left back was Kieran Tierney. And then you had Gabriel and Ben White paired in the back with Tomiyasu at right back. Our pivot was Lukunga and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. And then up front, we had Bukayo off the left, Martin in the hole, and then Pepe off the right with Oba up top. So, yeah, I think overall it was definitely good enough to beat Norwich. But I'm not going to lie, guys, I was very, very worried with that pivot going in. And I saw a lot of joy on the timeline, but secretly I was very, very worried about how they would be able to cope.
Yeah, I'm joining kind of late, but yeah, hello everyone. For me, with the lineup, I didn't mind it considering the circumstances. Obviously, Lokonga was injured. He played with a slight injury, and Partey was coming back from the injury, and Emil was sick. So, considering those things, it was probably the best lineup. And Elneny was injured, and Xhaka's red carded. So, those were the only two pivot options we actually had. So, I wasn't necessarily worried when the lineup came out. I always thought, regardless, we should win, but I was worried about, because most of us predicted a 4-0, 3-0, a big win, and I knew that wouldn't come to fruition, or I suspected it wouldn't because of all the changes, but we should have still scored anyways.
Well, I was convinced that Thomas Partey was going to start, particularly with the prop that we were doing with the training edits. And so for me, I've always felt that that was what was going to happen moving forward. But I guess we just weren't able to really tie it off in the end. But yeah, like you said, I think this is what was left with and what ultimately was our best case scenario.
I think I'm hoping now for consistency though, because I think I've talked about it in previous podcasts, but like you look at the back line, and ours has always been chop and changed over the last 4 years really, where each week is a different back line. It's nice to see now that I think this really is the back line that we will be using for this season. I think we will start to see a consistent back line as long as, any freak injuries happen or obviously more COVID cases happen. But I think this is what we will be seeing for, hopefully 20 games straight, 30 games straight at least. And I think that is a massive thing, because if you look at like most teams that are successful in the Premier League, you look back to the old great teams, one of the big things of them all winning the league was that their back line never changed. The midfield and their attack may have, had a few different changes in it, but the defense normally always stayed the same.
Yeah, with the back line where you have 5 specific people that we've had in the line, I talked about this before. You have real balance in this back 5. So you obviously have the ball carrier goalkeeper that we have now in Aaron Ramsdale. That's someone that can distribute balls to either side of the pitch, as well as be composed in possession. And then the main thing for me is you have a balance between your centre backs and a balance between your full backs. You have on one side you have the likes of a Gabriel and a Tomiyasu, real defenders, one-on-one dual monsters, tall physical players. And on the other side, you have ball progressors and attacking players that are competent and very good defensively in Tierney and Ben White. So you have balance in your centre backs and you have balance in your full backs, which creates partnerships and allows your back 5 to flourish. As we've mentioned already, that Sambi had an injury, and I think it did show. He looked a bit leggy and obviously was taken off a bit early. I was worried about, and we'll get into Ainsley, why I think he needs to just accept the right back role, man. It's time. But we needed him to play today, and he played decent. I mean, he wasn't great, and we'll get into that. But yeah, the front 4 was where I think problems started to arise. I mean, I think Ødegaard played okay in the first half. In the second half, we'll get into obviously what happened with him. And Pepe is, well, I'm sorry, man, but you can't play Pepe in a positional play technician reliant system. You need him on counter-attacking. You need him in counter-attacking football where you're playing against a high line, so you can run past the lines. You can't have him having that first touch when you're surrounded by low block players. It's just not going to work. And Saka, I think he's still getting up to grips with things, and I don't think the left wing is his position. I think he needs to shift back to right wing, because at the moment it's just not working from a left wing. 6 shots, and he doesn't look like Saka. I think he needs to go back to the right. If Pepe wants to fight for the left, he can fight for the left, because at the moment we need the England Bukayo Saka. We need the threat monster. We need someone that's going to be affecting the game much more, and he can do that much better from the right. And then Aubameyang, 6 shots, 1 scrappy goal, and we'll get into what he did as well. So let's start with doing that. So the first 15 or let's say 30 minutes, so the first half an hour, what did we see? What did we think? What did we take away from it?
Well, the press was back. I mean, the biggest thing I really wanted to commentate on this is a window to what we're going to see in the future. When I talk about technical security in the back line, a lot of people, we talk about on this podcast what it does going forward in terms of creating chances, what that gives you in terms of progressing the ball at pace. But one thing that I don't think people appreciated was it allows you to actually counter press, because if you have people committing up front, what they have is a security from the back that people can step up and close the space. We can squeeze the ball much more. When you have Ben White, you have Gabriel, you have, even your Lukonga that's hanging back. And then lastly, Tomiyasu offered great security kind of on the right wing. It allowed us not only to be progressive with the ball going forward, but it allowed us to have that security that if we were to lose the ball, we had defenders just squeeze up and continue the press. And I think we saw that really in quite good fashion. I think when you're looking at our press, it was very, very clear. We returned kind of to basics. We went away from this kind of 3-4-1-2 into kind of our more traditional 4-4-2. I saw that a lot more clearly. We kind of returned a little bit more to basics, and I think that was more to do with the fact that we had more technical security. We had our dual monster and Gabriel back there. So we had somebody in the back that, not just Mikel, but really the team felt comfortable with committing to the press. Now, I think they tired out around in the 30th minute, but I think in those 30 minutes, what we did definitely see is maybe not the most cohesive ball movement, but we saw a very cohesive press. And that was the tool that we were using, not only to squeeze and worry the back line, but also to create chances. And so that, for me, was probably the biggest takeaway in the first 30 minutes. I did see some issues from the bat about Lukonga and Ainsley and their partnership. It did worry me, but I felt while we pressed, we were able to mitigate that. And you kind of had that transition control that maybe those two didn't offer off the ball, but we offered just through the press and just through squeezing. And that's actually a tool I don't think gets talked about enough, to be honest with you. A press is very much a tool that you can use to create chances. And I think we did that excellently in the first half. I think your average starting position, it gives really to that kind of 2-3-5 that we keep preaching here on this channel. It's very, very clear in this original pass map. You can really see that in play. I think Odegaard dropped a little bit deeper than he needed to. But again, that was because I felt that Ainsley and Lukonga had trouble progressing the ball. And in fact, we saw the difference that a Thomas Partey makes in that regard. But yeah, the first 30 minutes, I did feel it was all us, particularly in terms of our press. A lot of great chances. Odegaard had a lovely ball, I think around the 17-minute mark, that releases Oba. And, maybe a little bit more kind of decisiveness in terms of his finishing, gets that through the line. But I felt that those first 30 minutes offered a lot of promise for maybe if you start to introduce a Thomas Partey, some more Emile Smith-Rowe. If you start to add those little pieces in terms of what we saw, we could see that Tomiyasu, in terms of his duel experts, were excellent. I think he won 7 out of 8 aerial duels in the end. And, in terms of his one-on-one defending, was excellent. And I don't think people saw the inverted right back that they suspected. I think you could see that he could get forward. We kind of warned on this channel he can do it. And in fact, that volley early on, it's kind of speaks to what he can do in terms of getting forward. So, yeah, a lot of great things in the first 30 minutes. I think this is one of the better intervals, rather, that we had with the starting lineup. And it let me know that moving forward, Mikel wants to persist with the press in terms of that's his ideal situation. So it's not just the high line. We do want to implement a press going forward. And I think we saw it.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I've got not a lot to add on to that. I mean, the one thing that I noticed, or certainly noted from that, maybe it was more the first 15 minutes, was that the press was very suffocating. That was the word, or the thing that came to mind. It was Norwich they didn't really have many outlets. They didn't have anywhere to go. It was we pinned them back several times right near their corner flag, down our right hand side, about 3 or 4 occasions, which led to attacking throw-ins, Krul just punting out of play or just booting the ball away because that's really all they could. And it was very much, I thought, that's the way that, as I say, Mikel wants to go with. We keep talking about the athletic centre backs, our full backs as well, being able to push 10, 15 yards further up the pitch. Whereas before, when you have Rob Holding or Pablo Mari, players or centre halves who are more probably thrive in a low block system, along with Leno, and you then leave massive gaps of spaces between the lines, don't you? Where Mikel wants to push a team up, they want to stay further behind. So with that regard, I felt that was very promising. But as I think, as George alluded to, our midfield pivot, which was, we can't forget, this is the first time them two have ever played together, and it was the first football that Ainsley's played this season, other than what is it, about 5 minutes against West Brom. Little mistakes, giving the ball away, other players making mistakes, giving the ball away, which led Norwich to coming back in after, as you say, the half an hour mark, and kind of pushed us further back, or certainly gave them a foothold into the game. That's how I saw the first sort of 30 minutes going.
Right, so CK, Willow, go for it, guys.
So you go, do you want to go?
Yeah, for me, with like the first 30 minutes, I think the pivot did okay. I think Ainsley was more incisive than Lokonga. He showed, I think, a bit more on the ball, but off the ball, I think he may have been worse. But the pivot didn't really have as much to do because Norwich didn't really cause us problems centrally in transitions, even though they did have their chances and did have a big chance, I think, within the first 30. But I think we were okay. I think we should have scored, though, because we had chances with Pepe, who at the start of the game was doing well, 1-on-1 versus Williams, and Aubameyang had a couple chances. So I do think the first 30 was a good indication of the future, and a bad indication in the sense that we were still very inefficient in front of goal. Even though we created and we pressed well, and defensively we weren't faulty, we still didn't manage to score at all in the first half. So I do think there were positives and negatives to show, even though we didn't have our full first 11.
Yeah,
Go for it, Willow.
I think we've all talked about the press, and it's very key these days. Liverpool won a league off a good press, really, and creating chances. So I think we did do it. I think we done it well for the first 20 minutes. We did create chances from it, but it's just that final action, isn't it, of actually making the right decision. And at the moment, our players aren't quite doing that yet, or they're not quite being able to just finish it off. So I think that just comes with maybe a bit of time, really, because over the last year we haven't created that many chances. We haven't been able to do that. We've been away from doing a press as well. So it's been like quick decision makings. A lot of the time it's been a lot of build up to create our goals. So it's been it was very different from what we've been doing. I still feel though, we've still got to move away from it a bit, because I did see us again. We would do some nice press, especially towards the goalkeeping defence, but the mid press I didn't think was nearly as good as what the attack was doing. And then you would see us again, like you would see basically everyone drop behind the ball, and that frustrates me. I don't like seeing that. So I think Alba did stay a bit further forward. Normally, like when we all dropped, like even the striker dropped, I don't think Alba did that as much. But I still feel like there were still 9 players all dropping behind the ball, and the press wasn't quite there. It just wasn't consistent. I think that was the word to say. It wasn't consistent with it, and I think again that just does come with time, because we've been playing in such a different way. But it was decent. It was decent. George, you're on mute, mate.
Nothing's changed. Nothing changes.
No, but I was just going to say, because you brought up a good point, but I think that speaks to the inexperience of the pivot. I think at the moment right now, what you're seeing is an inability to fire between the lines. And so what you were just describing about an inefficient pivot, where you saw a suffocating action, but then us not being able to sustain it, that comes from us not having the off-the-ball control that we had in that pivot. And, as much as people don't want to admit it, I think Granit Xhaka in there and in that team, helps that control, helps that off-the-ball pressure. And when you add maybe a Thomas Partey to this, and you start to add those two cogs, for example, I think you start to see the press maintained, and you start to see the coordinated press actually function a little bit more. Because I agree with you. I think it didn't sustain, but I think that's because we had to have all the players drop back, because Ainsley and Lokonga weren't progressing. They weren't able to fire it between the lines as often. We'll get into it, but that goal that we scored is all Thomas Partey. We didn't see a single pass attempted like that from any of the pivots. And if you add 3 or 4 of those more, you end up suffocating a lot easier. You end up stealing the ball kind of, at the top end of the pitch and not at the back end of the pitch. And you don't have people dropping deep to help with progression. So I think you would then end up having numbers. So it's a double-edged sword, right, Willow? Like, you don't have people progressing through it, but then you have them all drop deep, and you're leaving your striker isolated with Oba, which I think he has to do. You need an outlet there, but he's on an island. And then we kind of got this like vacuum of chance creation that we've been kind of moaning about for the past 3 or so games. So I agree with you in that sense that it wasn't coordinated. I just feel as though, unfortunately, as much as I love the two players, Lokonga and Ainsley, were a big fault for us not being able to A, sustain it, but also B, making it seem more coordinated with chance creation.
But I'll just tell you one thing. 1 out of 9 duels won by Ainsley is not a stat that you should be going to the fences with. It's just not something that I think that as a central midfielder you can't be losing your duels like that. And it speaks to transition control as well. If you keep getting beaten duels and people run past you, it's not good, man. You need to be able to. I mean, yes, you can say 4 out of those duels were neutral duels, i.e., neither side came out on top. But out of 9 duels, to only win 1 is not what a central midfielder does. I'm sorry. So I think he needs to go back to right back personally. I think the minute he went back to right back, he suddenly looked. Oh, would you look at that? He looked much more comfortable on the ball when you realise that you can use the touchline as a defender. And he had that channel on lock. So for me, it was just indicative. If you're going to play a young pivot in Sambi and Ainsley, you need to realise that you don't have, because especially without Sambi, without the legs, and we'll get into it as the game goes on and into the last 30 minutes. But when he got
even though he
taken
was
off,
slightly injured, Sambi, even though he was
he's a
slightly
leggy
injured,
man.
He was, but he was better off the ball than
100%, 100%, yeah.
I think he won 8 out of his 9 duels.
Yeah,
So
8 out of his 9 duels, yeah, correct.
He was better off but I think we missed Partey and Xhaka off the ball more so than on it.
I still feel like Lokonga actually did all right on the ball at times. You know, that ball over to Kieran Tierney, where Tierney actually mucked up the touch a bit and took it further to the touchline. I still thought, Lokonga was still making some decent penetrating passes. Obviously not through the centre like what Thomas can do, but for someone that was slightly injured, I still thought he'd done okay.
Yeah, that's not so much his fault. He definitely, he contributed. But I just think if I'm really being objective about it, the reason that we faltered, and you really look at a lot of the problems that we may have suffered, both first half and then, even dillying until the 62nd minute, they all stem from not enough progression through the center. They all stem from not firing the ball quick enough to your forwards, and you end up getting a repeat kind of that problem that we've had all season. And so I definitely give him a pass because, he's been doing it. But off the ball, he hasn't been doing it in the other games. So that's why I wanted to draw some, I think objective criticism to it, where I think off the ball, he does need to have some work. I think he tends to ball watch, I'll be honest. I see a lot of times Lokonga, he does vacate his zone. He tends to go to the ball. And, sometimes you need to hold your position a little bit more. I think what was nice was we kind of played him in a position where he was typically screening the back 3. And so he was that option of that 4th kind of in your 3-2-5. And he dropped in there to kind of pick up the ball. And that kind of limited the options that he has. I think with Ainsley, I don't know what you guys think, but the reason I feel that he's much better on the right is kind of similar to why I find Pepe more decisive on the left. And that's because he's forced to be making these decisions. When you give both of them time to at least think about stuff, they're not able to really make a decisive decision. So both Ainsley and Pepe, they look better in positions where they're restricted, where their passing range is restricted, and they're only able to kind of play the pass that's on. You give these guys space and time, they're unable to make a quick decision. And so I think with Ainsley, again, if he just committed to the right back, we'd be looking at a serious player. In fact, I'd argue we'd look at a very different projection of our season, because I think him down there, along with Tomiyasu, gives you the perfect balance of what you'd want in either right back form, inverted, overlapping, whatever you want. But fundamentally, I think this game would at least give Mikel power again. And the only reason I'm kind of standing back is because I think there was a clear divide about where he's best, both from him and amongst the fan base. But I think when you look at performances like this, it doesn't preach to him maybe continuing in a center mid capacity. I think he looked much better at right back. I think he looked much more influential at right back as well. It's not just looking better and helping the team, but I think himself, he was more dangerous at right back. In fact, he got up in several great positions. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping this kind of opens the door to maybe more fullback positioning from him, and maybe lets us see what a Granit Xhaka can do combined with Partey, because I think when Partey came in, and we'll get into it, we saw a lot of things that we've been missing for so long and everyone's been screaming about. But, I mean, you see the return of our spine in this game, right? So I think that first 30 minutes, just to take it back, it really brought back the defensive resoluteness. I wasn't worried about central gaps, and I couldn't say that the last 3 games. You know, I was never worried about us losing a duel because I felt confident in us defending set pieces. How many times did we not feel that set pieces were able to be defended in the previous games? I don't know about you guys, but I never had that fear. There was about 5 minutes towards the end that, you know, maybe things looked a little shaky on nerves, but all in all, we defended set pieces very, very well. And in fact, I think Aaron claimed crosses quite a lot. And I think in that first 30 minutes, that's the infamous Pookie selling the soul, which I don't think we've talked about, you know, quite yet. And, you know, Aaron's distribution was absolutely critical to beating the press. And so when you were looking at, you know, Norwich and what they were doing, you know, they had some really great games, you know, even against Liverpool where they outshot and out XG'd them on chances. And that was through their press. But, you know, Aaron just showed you what that Emi Martinez-like mentality can do to breaking the press. And I think our buildup was really quite nice. I don't know about you guys, but I think that first 30 minutes just showed us what having maybe your plan A in those positions does. Forget, you know, system and whatnot, but I felt that the buildup looked a lot more comfortable and a lot more fans were relaxed with Leno at the ball at his feet. Even Gabriel and White, who were excellent. There was a passage of play that, you know, he receives in the box, and, you know, White is doing a little Cruyff turn and passing it out to, you know, Gabriel. I didn't feel uncomfortable. Now, if you put Pablo Mari in there, you put Cedric in there, you put Chambers in there, I don't think we see that level of control. And that's a word I use very purposely. I just felt we were very controlled in how we were building up, even if the ideas were the same. And so that's the difference, I think, in my opinion, that you get with quality. And, you know, I think it's worth pointing out because we finally saw the return to it.
Yeah, the first to second phase transition was much better. What second to third phase was okay.
Lacking,
Yeah, but it really needed improvement. And that's where later in the game we saw it. But yeah.
Right. So I think on that note, I think we'll move on to the 30 to 60 mark. So for me, I'm just going to start this off. So for me, when as the half wore on, Norwich seemed to get more and more comfortable with the game. They started moving the game a bit of a quicker pace, and they started trying to get out of their own half. And we went through a bit of a lull. It wasn't like we were playing poorly. I think we were trying to consolidate the game because we were getting frustrated with our second to third action, as CK mentioned. We were getting frustrated with it, and we weren't looking at like ourselves. So, what do you guys think about that second 30 minutes?
I think for me, we lost a bit of control and like dominance over the game because in the first 30, because it happens a lot to our team. In like we lose once we lose, if we don't score, we're not really on top. We let the other team come into the game, so they grew into the game. Norwich grew into the game, got a very good chance with a header that just went wide. So, and then a lot of people were getting nervous, and for me, that's 30 to 60. It was more 30 to 45 where I thought we could have lost. Not lost, but like conceded potentially. But when we got into the second half, I think we were a bit more calm and just slowly grew back into the game. But Norwich did create chances due to us probably getting a bit frustrated and them growing in confidence because we didn't score during our flurries.
All right, George?
Yeah, I think unfortunately the press kind of faltered. I think we lost fitness. I don't think that we were pressing as much in that, and it gave Norwich the opportunity to dictate play. I think, you know, in that period, Ainsley and, you know, Pepe in particular really struggled towards the end of the half to get their foot on the ball. That was
100%.
where a lot of the duels started losing, and even Odegaard too, when he was dropping deep, it wasn't sticking to him. And so the turnover was, I don't have a map for you, but just from my eyes, it seemed from the 25-minute mark to beyond, we just couldn't sustain the ball for more than 35 seconds. Like, I think our average pass connections was maybe 10 or 15, and then we would lose it. So suited Norwich when you get to that, suited that transition, and then they started to exert their control in the match. I think possession went to 50-50 at that point in those last 10 to 15 minutes of the half. I do attribute that to kind of a breakdown in the pivot and to people getting tired. So the whole thing was that I think the pivot wasn't the strongest all game, but at least the press from the back and the front, players were kind of at least had the stamina to sustain it, so they could squeeze the ball. So even if we were losing it, we were getting it back quickly. I don't feel that we got the ball back at all in those last 10, 15 minutes. And Norwich were dictating play. They were sending their kind of fullbacks on, and they were troubling the back line a little bit. But the one thing that I did notice, I don't know about you guys, is while we didn't have control in the game necessarily, I always felt confident in the duels where Gabriel, White, and Ramsdale would claim what they needed to claim. And Tommy Asu too was really, really good, and he helped a lot down there in terms of closing the space. But yeah, it was a tough one to see, only because I kind of expected it when you had that kind of young pivot, really. So at the same token, while you need to take your chances, and you can't sit there and claim 90 minutes of dominance, we're just not there yet as a team and as players. But Norwich had their day or their minutes in the sun at that moment, and it was just about riding out that storm, which we evidently did. So while there are definitely things I didn't like to see, it's just I also am cognizant that that's not our first choice pivot, so I'm not going to hammer really them too much. But there were things that we needed to improve. I felt that Bukayo could have hung back a little bit more. I know why he was offering an outlet. If you look at his average position, he was right by Oba. He was really quite high on a lot of things.
He's very high, yeah.
And I felt that Kieran was doing a much better job defensively. He wasn't bombing on as much, which was needed, in the game state. But I just felt that there was the disconnect. There was a disconnect between the attack and the defense, and that manifested the most when they tired, basically around the 30-minute mark. So, yeah, tough to see. But our substitutes provided the injection of kind of stuff that we needed, and I'm really glad that he did it early too, by the way, just to wrap up that interval, because I was screaming at the screen. I was saying we need a change. It wasn't enough halftime. I saw that things still weren't working, at least for me. There was not that authoritative punch in the press, and so I said, you know what, we need some technique on the ball, because right now the players are gassed. The press is not going to work. We need players that are willing to get themselves on the ball and fire stuff between the lines, because right now people are just 5 yards too slow to getting back in their positions. So, yeah, I think Emile and Partey were the perfect switch, and I really enjoyed that quickness of substitute, because I think Mikel gets kind of criticized for not making quick substitutions, but I think here at the 62-minute mark, it was exactly when I would have done it personally.
Yeah, and before I get to Alex, I just want to quickly bring this up because I know people make fun of this new X threat stats, but I do want to bring up this. It does give a good indication of what happened during that point. So if you look here at the 30-minute mark, you see the first 30 minutes here, and you can see how we're dominating. You can see these lines here where we're dominating, and then at the 30-minute mark, you start getting Norwich coming again and again and again and again, and you can see them starting to build up. Yes, we've had, as the second half started, we started moving the ball better and we started getting back, but you can see that there was that period between about 30 minutes and about half time when Norwich came back into that game and really did start to look at like they were going to push a threat in the interval. I think just before half time they had a chance, if I remember correctly, and they did seem like they wanted to come into that game. So yeah, X threat maybe not as bad as people make it out to be. It might not all be a meme, but because it is showing what kind of happened during the game during that period. So I'll hand it over to Alex now, because I want to hear from what he wants to talk about with this half an hour in play.
Yeah. So for me, whilst football has evolved certainly over the last 15, 20 years in terms of tactically becoming more profile specialists, there is still, for me, three fundamentals which come into a successful side, and that is confidence, that is familiarity, and that is match fitness. And I feel like because of the poor start that we've had to the season, confidence around the team is understandably not as high as we'd like it to be. And as we've alluded to as well, that's the first time that the back line, the back five, has played together along with the midfield pivot in front. So the familiarity with them is also low. So obviously what's needed is a run of games to improve both the familiarity and the confidence, because as soon as you start to string a few results together, players then start to take more risk. They start to trust each other more because you've gone in the trenches, you've won your battles, you've won your 1v1s, and you've come out on top, and you start to trust the players around you. And you also understand how they think, where you position on the pitch. And I think in that middle 30, we started to see Norwich obviously caught on to the fact that, yes, we've mentioned about the pivot. They made there was a few mistakes in there, or there was certainly not as much authority in there, and Norwich caught on to that. I don't want to pick on the guy, but Pepe, whilst on the face of it, you look like he had a good game. When you actually look back at it, he did contribute to a lot of the Norwich being able to turn the tide a little bit, because he got a lot of the ball and he really made some poor decisions. As George says, when you narrow down his options, he is a better player because he doesn't really have to think about it. Seems to be more instinctual than he is being able to make a decision between option A and option B. And because of that, Norwich came back into it. And I feel like because it was home as well, the crowd started to get a little bit nervous energy, which then obviously transfers onto the players, and that doesn't help. But I think once we string a few more games together, once you start to pick up some results, I thought that we would win this game quite comfortably. Obviously, that didn't turn out to be, or in terms of the scoreline anyway. But once we string the results together, the confidence will come back, match fitness will come, and then the players will start to get familiar with each other. And I think from that point, you will start to see Arsenal being a lot more authoritative, more confident, and the football will come as a result of that. The good football that will come as a result of that.
Right. Who? Tell me again. Who haven't I come to? I think I haven't come to Willow and CK. Or is it CK? I've already come to.
I think I don't know if CK's gone.
I have. I spoke first.
You gone? Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's just me. So I think boys covered most of it. Really, I think it's just some of it comes down to the quality of players, where being able to hang on the ball for a bit longer, so players get a rest. I think also as we are a team, we're evolving. I think we do need to get our fitness levels up, because that's what I think we are working towards being, is a high pressing team. So you do need to be, getting your fitness levels up. So, and I think it also helps as well, because when you don't have the quality of players in there, if they've at least got higher fitness than the other team, you can at least outwork them, which I think, you look at kind of Liverpool, that's what Jurgen Klopp did. He didn't always have the quality of players that he has now, more what he started with, but he got the fitness up of the whole team. So, yeah, I might not have the best quality of players, but they will outwork you. And I think that's something that Arsenal could learn from, really, when it's not going our way, and say we do have a Thomas Partey or a Xhaka out, at least have the players, have your next players, the Lokongas, the Ainsley Maitland-Niles, at least have them up the fitness levels to be able to outwork the other midfielders that you're playing against. And I think we will need to work on that quite a lot still.
Yeah. So, I mean, when did we make the substitutions? I'm just going to check that again, because I think
62 minutes.
It was 62 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's why I think George said the 62-minute mark onwards. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Because usually Mikel waits until the 70th plus minute to make the substitutions. Usually, doesn't he?
He has a little bit of Wenger in that mindset. But,
so a couple of things I want to bring up before we do move on. Between the 31st and 45th minute, we were actually down in possession 60-40, which is, I think, quite an interesting point, because they did seem to pick it up a bit, as well as in terms of that second 15 minutes, so 46 to 60, it was about even 51 to 49. So they did come back, and fair play to them. They gave it a shot and they gave it a swing, but I just don't think they have the end product, and they don't. And the one thing I will say is that Timo Pukki got bullied. Every time Gabriel White came close to him, he went down, and he was complaining like anything, because he just couldn't hack the challenge. He couldn't.
They even came together at times. They worked in well, in the sense that sometimes White would come first, and then Gabriel would be right behind him just in case he needed him. So they worked well as a partnership. Just the first time to ever even play together on and off the ball, even against Buki. They communicated well.
Well, I think, Chris, you know what you saw, but sorry just to butt in, is you saw the best of both of them. They're both 1v1 duel monsters. Gabriel controlled set pieces. There was no discrepancy on aerial duels. I don't know about you guys, but, Tomiyasu may have helped, but, we got that physical presence back. Gabriel's short passing was a lot better this game, too. I don't know if people were watching. It's one of his weaknesses that I say short and medium passes, was better. But then you look at Ben White, I don't know if people realize, but he had 3 key passes yesterday. And just to put that in perspective, David Luiz had, I think, 2 or 3 all season, and then Holding 4 as well. And so he did that in one match. So in terms of his distribution, it was phenomenal.
So sorry to sort of jump in there, George, but I think when you look Ben White, he just doesn't ever look rushed, doesn't ever look flustered on the ball, and he's got so much confidence in his ability to carry the ball or pick out a pass. I don't think we've seen a centre half, or I don't think we quite realised how much we've missed out on a centre half like that. He is very much in the mould of, I'm not going to say he is John Stones, but John Stones has that equal confidence in his ability to draw attackers on and then pop it off behind them to the side of them. And Ben White has that in spades.
It's why I called him an upgrade on David Luiz as well, because as much as, we have a ball progressor, we have a ball carrying progressor. I make that difference very clear, because what you've got now is somebody that can receive under pressure but take it out himself. And, he draws opposition. When you've got a dribbler that's able to do that and go into midfield, you open space for your fellow counterparts. How many times did, Ben White drive into space and then knock it to the right-hand channel for Tomiyasu, Pepe to kind of run into? And that is how you draw out low blocks. That is how, when you face the likes of your Burnleys, your lower relegation fodder teams, those that are wanting to sit in, you're going to draw out their system and their low block by having players like that. So, yeah, I think you're spot on, Alex. It was excellent to see. And even you, Chris, in terms of that partnership, it was everything that they lacked. They complemented each other wonderfully. And I don't think it was any less with Tomiyasu, another dual expert that could help. If, Ben White's going to carry up himself and go into midfield, we need somebody that's 1v1 excellent in the wide spaces, because that's where we might be vulnerable on the counter. And so it was really nice to see. And, Kieran didn't have his traditional overlapping, game. It was very, I wouldn't say it was defensive, but it was, smartly. It was reserved a little bit. And, it was needed as well. I loved that back line seemed to naturally cater to each other's instincts. So like what you were saying, Chris, when Ben would kind of push up, Gabriel was close to him. And, that's his natural instinct. When you start to pair people like Gabriel and Holding, you don't get that. And the reason you don't get that is because they're both front-footed defenders. Ben White's a little bit more hung back. He's a little bit more sweeper in natural tendencies. And, Gabriel's a little bit more front-footed. Whereas on the ball, they're the reverse. And so I make that distinction. That's why when you guys recruit player profiles, you need to make sure those partnerships matter. A Pablo Mari and, a Rob Holding, the reason we don't see what we saw in yesterday's game is, it's not just the system, guys, it's how they play it. And, that quality is very, very different. So that's our spine. It was just really good to see. And, I don't know about you guys, but I start to get excited when we start to talk about this good part of the 62-minute mark with Partey introduced, and you add that quality in midfield to what we already saw behind and the resolute behind it. It gets me excited.
Yeah, but last thing on the partnership, sorry, Colin. Last thing on the partnership is that the fact that they cater to each other's needs is very important, because no matter how good they are, we've seen the best of the best. Like Rio and Terry, for example, they didn't really work because they both wanted to do the same thing. And Gabriel and Holding, to a lesser extent, obviously they're not as good, wanted to do the same thing, so it didn't work.
You mean Murray and Holding?
No, I mean Gabriel and Holding.
But Gabriel Holding worked quite well, I thought, especially in that first half of last season.
It caused us problems a lot, actually. But anyways, they wanted to do the similar thing, in the sense that they both wanted to be on the front foot and someone else to rest back behind, but they never really alternated. So for me, no matter the quality, if they suit each other, and having a well-drilled team that cover for each other will definitely improve us.
All right. So We're gonna have a conversation about this holding Gabriel thing eventually, CK. Don't worry. But just on the note of North American person saying "be excited," I think we'll move on to the
Oh my
60-second
days.
60-second minute onwards, and where we did start to get a bit more exciting with Thomas Partey coming on.
And
So
Smith
what do
Rowe.
we? Yeah, with Anne Smith Rowe as well. So what did we think about that last 30 minutes and the party that ensued at the last 30 minutes that actually happened?
So
Well,
moving on from that really bad joke, essentially the best thing that I look at is within 2 minutes, Thomas Partey creates that chance. And what he does is he walks in. It's not just his presence off the ball that I think we've highlighted in spades, but it's this idea to fire the ball in between the lines at pace to your forwards. And it gets the team moving up. It's that authority that I think Ainsley and Lukonga just didn't have. And, even Lukonga, when, he's not injured and he has that space, he doesn't fire that in between the line ball through the thirds. It's normally a floated pass. It's got a varied pass throughout. I don't see him fire between the lines where, look, Thomas has taken out 4 players with that pass. If you start to look back at that replay and where he receives kind of in the left deeper pivot, he has a tendency to do this. I normally tell people with Thomas, he actually likes to receive in the left and then progress left to right. He actually does that pass quite a bit, and he swaps in between the right and left half space. It's just how he likes to progress, and he needs that freedom to move. And the one thing that you offer in that minute, at least, is when you had Emile Smith Rowe, you had another connector. You had somebody where Bakaya would drop deep, but then you've got somebody else willing to do that connecting role, because I felt that Martin Odegaard, it's not his game. And I've tried to tell this to people where, look, I know I'm not his biggest fan, but what he can't do is receive under pressure with contact behind. Emile Smith Rowe can do that in spades. So what you need to do is offer somebody else that can connect on the other side to open both sides of the attack. I think in that 62-minute mark, why things look so great, it wasn't just those players, but we were actually attacking from both sides. We became a lot more variable, a lot more unpredictable about where we're going to go. And that was, because we had somebody finally in deep that was going to fire balls, both to, Saka, to Odegaard, to Emile Smith Rowe. We had somebody that was willing to make that pass, brave enough, by the way, to play that pass. And I don't think, Granit always does that. It's why Thomas, for me, is world class and steps into most teams in the world, because he has that ability to get himself on the ball and really progress a team on his own. He's a one-man midfield. He really is. So I just think it's awesome that we had him back. A big reason why that, 60 to 90 had such, kind of promise for us is because we saw the return of progression. And, that's what I mean when I say that you have somebody that you can fire the ball to your forwards quickly and give them 1v1 or 2v1 chances. Because make no mistake, Saka has a lot of stuff to do when he receives that ball. But once he breaks, it's an immediate 2v1. And, now we're immediately in space. And that is where you want your Aubameyangs. That is where you want your Martinellis. You want your Pepes. We have goal threats in this team. We just don't give them the ball enough to display those goal threats. That's the issue with our chance creation. It's not necessarily the system, or it's not necessarily that we have forwards that can't score. We don't give them the ball enough so that they have the option to miss. You look at your Salahs, your elite goal scorers, they get 3 to 4 chances a game. We give our forwards 1 to 2. And when you have Partey who can do that exact passage of play 3 to 4 times a match, you start to give your Aubameyangs their chances that he's going to score you goals. He is. There's no doubt he is still it. I've said in a lot of group chats, this idea that he was done is ridiculous. People might say that's a tap-in. I say sharp movement. I say you need to be there on the back post. And yeah, you do get a little bit of luck, of course, in terms of how that passage of play comes down. But that initial pass, that's all Thomas Partey. That initial chance creation is us willing to fire between the lines and take out Norwich's entire midfield and attack. So really, really good. I felt we struggled in the last, I'd say, 8 minutes or so, if I'm really being honest, too. I think you see that on your X threat, too, Curran. But even just the eyes, people got nervous. There was a 1-0 score line. And I felt as though this was the creeping in of the 3 games of losses that had a little bit of rebound in there. It wasn't necessarily us, playing poor, but it was being nervous about, oh, gosh, we need this win as much as, many people. And I think when you look at some of the post-match stuff, Aubameyang said it in terms of his post. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see that, but, he talked how, yes, it's 3 points, but it was more to us. And he made reference to that. And it's about what, Alex, you were saying earlier about building confidence. Football is not just 1 + 1 = 2. And, these things of, us kind of creeping back in the last 5 minutes, I don't critique the team for that. I critique the mentality. And I think that's just kind of the par for the course when you lose 3 games on the bounce with, 9 conceded. And so we just needed that kind of 3 points. We needed that win, and we needed that clean sheet, which was amazing. So yeah, rough 8 minutes to end. I think we held on a little bit by the seat of our pants. But I think I said it in my post afterwards as well. It was a little bit more about outcome than process right now. We just needed the win. There was a lot of really great points that we could see. We just need to build momentum right now. But I think we'll get to final thoughts overall. But I think that's really the period where I think from 60 to 85, it was all us. It was all us really pressuring. That progression was evident. And then we had the last minutes of squeaky bum time. But, it happens when you've got 3 losses on the bounce. So overall, that was good. And I felt that we were due the points really where it should have been more than 2. Let's be honest. Like a lot of those chances as well, there were some really good chances that we created in that period. I think 1-0 flattered Norwich in the end, particularly when you start to look 30 shots, 6 on target, over 2.7 xg to 0.5 xg. Like those numbers are big. The last time Arsenal had a 30+ shot game was in 2017, I think, against United. So when you start looking back, yes, it wasn't the perfect. Yeah, it wasn't the perfect game, by the way, but 30 shots is no coincidence. That doesn't happen often, even in statistical terms. So I think it's disingenuous to say we weren't due a win. But anyways, I kind of creeped into final thoughts. But yeah, that was my thought period for the 60 to 90.
So have we got anyone else want to do any 60 to 90 minutes, or are we going to go straight into final thoughts?
Yeah, for me, in the 60 to 90, there was a lot more in decisions made in the final third with Emil coming on. A lot of stuff was said in the timeline about Emil, Pepe, and all this stuff, but having Emil, Saka, Pepe, Odegaard, Partey all on the pitch, really, we were a bit more efficient in the final third in terms of creating more chances, but we still lacked the final edge with the scoring. Like Emil missed a chance where he stepped outside the centre back and put it at the keeper. Krul made a lot of saves, and I'm not going to make a joke like Curran, but he did make a lot of saves in that last 30 minutes. But yeah, like it was positive to see how many shots we got in the last 30. I'm not sure the exact number, but it looked like we had a very strong flurry to end the game. And obviously the nervousness came, and it will come when you've lost 3 in the bounce and when you're missing consistently, because you may feel like a goal might come in. But yeah, it was positive to see that we didn't buckle at the last hurdle.
All right, anyone else? Or shall we go to final thoughts? Willow, Alex?
Yeah, just joins. I'm mostly happy to go into final thoughts, but as I said, it's just Thomas Partey, Rolls Royce of a player. I'll say it, this season he's going to be the best midfielder in the Premier League. I don't give a damn. And he showed it today. He got us that win by that final ball.
Yeah. Go on, Karen. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. So
yeah, I'll go first on this. I'll go first. For me, final thoughts was firstly, I shouldn't have pussied out and from the 1-0 to 4-0 prediction, but yeah.
Second week in a row, by the way, just to let you know. Second week in a row.
Yeah, I should stick to my guns, but like for me, like I'm happy we got the win, relieved. The difference this week in general in the fan base was what could have we done to score more rather than what could have we done to concede less. And I think that is nice to have that, and to have the most shots you've had in a game for 4 years now is always a positive. And yeah, it's good that I think Norwich came at the right time for us as a team, and I hope that we can continue this next week and our players will be more fit without the injuries. But yeah, it's calmer now. We're not in the bottom 3 anymore, and let's use this victory and not make it a one-off and go on a run. Yeah, that's my final thoughts, to be honest.
Willow?
No, yeah, like look, we had 30 shots, as you said. We haven't done that since 2017, so that's good. That's a good sign to see that we've done it. Like, and not every win has to be this, glamorous win. Like, the amount of time, like Man U finished second in the league last year. How many shithouse wins did they get last year? Bloody countless, with refereeing decisions going their way as well. So we don't always need to be winning 3-4-0. Look, it's 3 points on the board. We're off the mark. Let's keep moving. The only W Norwich got that game was. Well, the only W Norwich got was the one that George pronounces in their name. That's all they've got. Like they ain't getting nothing else. So I think they're going down. I think let's hope Thomas Partey can he can hopefully start against Burnley. But it was a decent game. Look, we had ups and downs. It was inconsistent. But when you're missing your 2 starting pivot players, and Smith Rowe wasn't starting either, it's going to be like that. He went through on goal. He should have probably scored that goal as well. And I saw a lot of hate on him for that as well. I think CK actually, he mentioned that about him being able to pass that through to Pepe, but he created the opportunity by himself. Again, it's just coming down to the final details of being able to do that final action or putting it in the back of the net. But I'm sure that will come with more chances created.
All right. So before we get to Alex, I want to go to George, and then I'll go after Alex. So I'm just going to let you boys talk. So just let's just do it that way. So George, you can go first, then Alex, and then I'll go.
Yeah, so I guess final thoughts. If you could put that GIF of Gattuso, sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit, in terms of the actual performance, is probably the most accurate way to describe it. What I saw was a lot of windows to the future. We talked about the first 30 minutes. I saw a counter press. Really excited for that. I saw what, Thomas Partey, in terms of his combination with maybe Ben White and Gabriel on the back 5. Absolutely. That really makes me happy in terms of, what we could see going forward. But then again, I think we still had some chance creation issues, some lineup issues. I still don't think Pepe should be starting for me. I would prefer Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe as, your final front 3. When you do have, Willow's picture up there of how many people he's taken out, like that's the type of quality that we need in midfield. I think I start to add a Granit Xhaka structure to that. And, one game a week, there's a lot of potential for this team in starting 11 to do something this season. And I think despite the form, I've always said I maintain caution because I feel as though we're going to see a very, very different team moving forward. Again, 30 shots, over 2.5 XG. That's more than enough to say that you should have won the game. It's not a lucky win. It was deserved in terms of how we looked overall. I felt there was only 30 minutes where Norwich deserved plaudits, whereas we dominated proceedings other than that. And I'm just excited to get our kind of injured players back. Because, Thomas got 20 minutes. I expect him to start against Burnley. I look at Emile, who was sick. He's going to likely start against Burnley. Then we have a choice now, Pepe, Saka. It's nice to have those choices. And I just think moving forward, we're looking at a team in transition, but this is the spine. When I talk to people about saying what's the effect of having a spine, I don't use it as an excuse for a coach. I feel as though this game gave you no spine, but also a spine, and gave you totally different passages, plays that could really show you the potential of the team. So yeah, very happy with a lot of the stuff I saw, but the performance, we just needed a win, guys. That's all it was. And a win we got. So we move, as they say.
Alex, go for it, mate.
Yeah, so I think there's definite positives to take out of this game. And I also think that we've learned about some players. Mainly, we've touched on him earlier on where we talked about Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Don't think we see a future for him in midfield, even if he might think that he has. He certainly doesn't give us the technical security and the confidence that we want from a midfielder playing for Arsenal. And Granit Xhaka alongside Thomas Partey clearly is our best pivot options that we have currently at the club. I think it also highlighted the fact that we probably do need to sign a midfielder still, whether it be in the January transfer window or if we do address it in the summer. We definitely need another option there, because otherwise, as you say, a couple of players who are returning from fitness, or when it comes to the African Cup of Nations, that could be an interesting time altogether. We certainly need another option there. But I think this is definitely a good foundation to build on. We get the whole week now where we can get Tomiyasu is in now training all week with the rest of the team, as is Ramsdale, as is Thomas Partey, people getting minutes in their legs. And it's something to build on, isn't it? It's a foundation, and then we can go from there. And I feel like we'll see a better performance overall against Burnley, I think, next week. Though I do think Burnley are going to be a lot tougher test than Norwich will be. So I can certainly see another scrappy 1-0 win. But that's the kind of victories that we want to be getting right now whilst we're gelling, we're getting together as a team, and the fitness is going from there whilst we're waiting for players to get up to full speed.
All right. So for me, before we do head out, so it's a good thing.
I think we got a little bit of robot.
Bad
from
timing.
I know, it was perfect.
Really bad timing. But yeah, he's gonna say his points. But like, quickly though, what would you rate our performance out of 10 before Karen comes up?
I think for me, as much as I eulogized, for me it's a 6 out of 10, just objectively. So I don't think we didn't finish enough chances, and I don't think we created enough sustained pressure for me to really go to the 7 or 8. So about a really good performance, but defensively we were resolute, never looked like conceding. Ultimately got 30 shots and a goal. So we're back. I hear it current in the distance.
The minute I start talking, my internet goes out. It's just the epitome of my luck at the moment.
But yeah, quickly, I'm a 6 out of 10 overall. But we'll go to Curran for his final thoughts.
Literally, mine is 6 out of 10. So the thing is, for me, the good points is you can see the back five. I don't know if where I cut out, but I was saying that the back five that we saw today is the back five you can see for the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, we have balance in that back line. You have, as I was mentioning before, both progressors and defensive beasts, and a goalkeeper that seems to want to understand what is required from him. That Arteta's not going to have to shout at him constantly about having to go on the floor, go short, don't go long. He seems to know what he's doing. He has that clip ball to the side. He has that ability to drop a shoulder even and beat a man and actually continue the build up. So it gives you that confidence. In terms of bad points or points to improve on, efficiency is a main thing for me. 30 shots with 6 on target isn't good enough. If you have players like Pepe with 7 shots and Bukayo with 6 and Alba with 6, you should be scoring more than 1 goal. And that's another thing for me. We need to be more clinical in front of goal. I think there's a lot of rustiness, and 4 games into the season, we should start to getting rid of that now. I think we need to kind of buckle down and get rid and start looking at things, because we're going to be starting after Wimbledon. We're going to be starting to be playing 1 game a week. There's going to be a lot of training ground work, and we're going to be a lot. And we shouldn't be as dependent on backups, because we're not going to have that crunching European group stage to get through, as well as the Premier League game. So we should start to see where the players pick up, and we should start picking up points now. And it's that 10-game run. We have to see where we're at, and then we can evaluate where projections from there. So on that note, I think a 6 out of 10 is fine, but a couple of quick things before we do head out. Guys, we're getting even closer to the watch time element on the YouTube about subscription for monetization, but we really need to push up the subscriber count. So please subscribe and share the channel, and make sure you do try and share the Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen on, because we're trying to diversify as well as get the YouTube to where we need to get it. And we've got all different kinds of platforms as well. So we've got TikTok, everyone's Twitter, including Alex at Spanish Alex 85 for the Spotify, because I don't think we're going to get it in the Spotify, but we will get it in the Spotify. I'll put it in the description, but it will be in the description of the YouTube as well. So make sure you follow him as well. I hope everyone's feeling a bit better now. We've got 3 points as we're not in the relegation zone anymore. And on that note, I think I'm going to head out. So thank you, everyone. And good night. I hope everyone has a nice evening, and I'll see you soon. Yeah. Bye-bye now.
Peace.